Good afternoon and welcome. We're going to give folks a few moments to join here. It's straight up 1 o'clock. We'll give them about 2 minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you for joining. Good afternoon and welcome to the second in our series of technical talks and deep dives. My name is Craig Tiffany. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Customer Success. Today I have our SE extraordinaire, Brian Patterson, presenting our solution today. I also have one of the top members of our customer success team, Stuart Knight, helping out answering questions throughout the presentation. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please type them into the question bar and we'll be answering these throughout today's program. So actually, without further ado, I'm going to hand over control to Brian for the closer look at radio, power, and channels. Brian?
Thanks, Greg. All right, so just jumping right in here. With Wi-Fi, there are two different bands that we use, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. And the 5 gigahertz band is obviously a lot larger, and so you can get a lot more channels out of it, and you can get a lot more traffic out of it. And so on 2.4 gigahertz, there's only three 20 megahertz non-overlapping channels, while 5 gigahertz has much more space with 23 non-overlapping channels. Okay. Working on audio controls.
Okay, now we're back. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, going back, the radio channels on Wi-Fi are on standard 22 megahertz wide, and so that's a 20 megahertz channel with a 2 megahertz buffer in between them. And so on 2.4 gigahertz, there's the entire spectrum is only about 60 megahertz wide. And so you can only get three distinct non-overlapping channels out of that. And so you can see that on the graphic here where the red arcs here are the three channels. And then the overlapping channels would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12, 13, 14, where 13, 14 are not valid in the US. And so on 2.4 gigahertz, it only has the three 20 megahertz non-overlapping channels, while 5 gigahertz has more space, and it has 23 non-overlapping channels. You can get more speed by using 40 megahertz channels, but that's not a very neighborly thing to do on 2.4, because if you have other networks around you, your neighbors, you're going to be stepping on their space and causing interference. So it's really not a good idea to use 40 megahertz channels on 2.4. And then on 5 gigahertz, 802.11n defaults to 40 megahertz wide channels, so you can get a lot more throughput out of that. And then on 802.11ac, that's a 5 gigahertz only protocol, and by default that goes to 80 megahertz channels. And then with Wave 2, they go to 160 megahertz channels, which is really wide. And then in small offices and homes, those defaults are fine, but in higher density deployments, a narrow channel width would be used to allow for more APs in the area, so you can spread the load across more of the spectrum and across more access points. Now keep in mind that Wi-Fi is a half duplex medium, meaning that it's kind of like a walkie-talkie, and all clients are on the same walkie-talkie channel, or with a technical term would be a collision domain. If you've ever heard a busy CB radio or a police radio channel, you know it can get pretty messy sometimes. So in order to avoid interference, clients will listen to see if the channel is clear. And if it is, then they will start to broadcast. This is called Clear Channel Assessment, or CCA. And if there is a collision in the air, both clients will stop broadcasting and then wait a random period of time before they try again. But that CCA only works if the clients are on the same channel and can sense this collision. When you have different channels overlapping, so if you have your network on channel 1, but your neighbor's network is on channel 3, and there's a collision there, it's going to not be able to sense that, and then it just gets interference, and that can cause retransmissions. Now, to ensure that your data reliably gets to where it needs to go, the 802.11 spec says that each frame sent needs to be acknowledged by the receiver. And if the sender doesn't receive that acknowledgement, then it will try again, and that's when a retransmission happens. However, if this happens often, it can cause a lot of retransmissions to happen. And when you retransmit, you're using more radio time, and more radio time for transmissions. Retransmissions means that there's less radio time left over for clients that don't need retransmission. And so because of that, you want to make sure that you don't have any overlapping channels, and that your channels are staggered across your access points. So when you're staggering channels, you want to make sure that you don't have APs on the same channel right next to each other. And you may have some overlap on the same channels, especially in 2.4 gigahertz, because there just isn't enough space there. But you can try to map it out in a way that that works out best. So for instance, on this diagram here, we have a few here that are channels 1, 6, and 11. I guess my 11s didn't come through very well in the presentation, but so we've staggered them here so that 1, 6, and 11 are not right next to other 1, 6, and 11s. Now over here, there's a section here that the ones are pretty close to each other, but you sometimes have to do that just because there isn't enough channels. Now, you can use a site survey tool such as NetSpot or Ekahau, and that can help you determine the signal levels throughout the space. And now you want to have enough signal overlap between those cells in order to give clients a chance to get a good signal before they roam to a new access point. So for example, Apple devices, they'll start to look for a new access points to roam to at about a negative 70 dB signal level. And so it's best to have an overlap that's at least negative 70, so that you give clients a chance to see the new access point and associate with it before they lose too much signal off of the previous one. Now, when setting up your network, it's best to take the realities of the building into consideration. So it may be best to put an access point in one area, and that'll get you the best central coverage, but that's not always available because you might not have a network drop there, or you might not have power. And so you kind of just have to be pragmatic about it. And you would want to try to wire as many of the access points back to your network as possible. And then once you have that, then you can use one of those site survey tools to find any dead spots. And then if you do find a dead spot where you can't get a network drop to, you can set up one of our access points as a repeater, and it will mesh over to one of the access points that is plugged into the network. And then it'll automatically set it up as a repeater and extend the network. So speaking of mesh, the optimal signal level between neighbors is about negative 50 to negative 65 RSSI, and that gives you the best balance between between being far enough away to meaningfully extend the network while being close enough to get a good signal back to the gateway so that you get good mesh speeds. And now gateways and repeaters need to be on the same channel because a repeater is essentially a client off of that gateway access point. And so they need to be on that same channel so that they can communicate with each other. And because it is a walkie-talkie, the gateway talks and the repeater receives, and then the repeater has to repeat that signal on its own walkie-talkie out to the clients or out to another repeater. And so because of that, it can get pretty noisy pretty quickly. And so we don't recommend more than 5 repeaters per gateway. And then you don't want to have more than 3 hops away from that gateway. So if you have your gateway and then it's talking to a repeater, and then you have another repeater that's within range of the first repeater, but not the gateway, then that would be a second hop. And so once you get too many hops in there, the time it takes for that walkie-talkie conversation to happen gets to be to the point where your throughput at the end of the line gets to be pretty low. So the 2 different bands, 2.4 versus 5 gigahertz, there are some advantages and disadvantages to each of them. And so on 2.4 gigahertz, it's a longer wavelength. And so you can kind of think of it as the difference between AM and FM radio. So AM radio, it's low frequency and can go farther, but it's more susceptible to interference, and the bandwidth available is less. And so on 2.4, you can go longer distances, and it more easily penetrates obstructions such as walls and trees. And then but the disadvantage on 2.4 is that there's more interference from other sources such as other Wi-Fi, baby monitors, Bluetooth, and all the other things that operate on 2.4. And then it's also a narrower band. You only have that 60 megahertz for the total band. And then it only supports up to 802.11n. So your speeds on it are going to be more limited. Now in 5 gigahertz, it's a shorter wavelength. So that's going to mean that it has a shorter range, and it's going to be harder to get through obstacles, especially really solid objects. But the advantage is that there's less interference from other sources. There aren't as many other objects on the band. And then it's also a lot wider band. So you have a lot more bandwidth available for faster speeds. And then you can also have more non-overlapping channels so that you can have more density in the deployments. And so on the channel width, what channel width should you use? On 20 megahertz, that's what you should use on 2.4 gigahertz. It allows for your higher density deployments, but you're not going to get as fast speed on it. But on 2.4, that's really what you should be using because there just isn't enough space in there for 40 megahertz wide channels. And so for 40 megahertz wide channels, on the 5 gigahertz band, you get 12 non-overlapping channels. And then you use it when a higher bandwidth amount is required. So you don't have quite as many clients, but you have a faster speed requirement. You're doing video, things like that. 40 megahertz is good, but don't use it on 2.4. It's probably going to be a bad time. And then on 80 megahertz wide channels, this is available on 802.11ac, and it allows for much faster speeds, up to and over a gigabit of the physical link speed. But it's not very good for high density deployments because you're using up a lot more of the band. And then there's 802.11ac Wave 2 that uses even double that with 160 megahertz. And so that's something that is available and coming down the road from us soon. But it's something that you want to use in situations where you know that you're not going to have very many other networks around. And now you don't necessarily have to worry about setting up your channel assignments manually, because thankfully we have an auto channel configuration here. So each open mesh access point does a nightly scan to determine the best channel based on the current usage, and then it will automatically configure itself. So how it works is that when auto channel is turned on, each access point takes a quick scan of interference during the maintenance window that you configure in CloudTrax. And then we'll optimize those channels based on several factors, such as interference from other networks, the channel assignments of the other 8 access points on your network, and then it will also make sure that it's setting repeaters to be on the same channel as the gateway that works best for them and the gateway that has the best signal to them. And we do that. Each access point uploads all of that data up into CloudTrax, and then we make that decision intelligently on the server side, so that we can take a look at the network all as a whole, rather than each individual access point making that decision individually. And so now moving on to radio power. So each open mesh access point has different radio power, and radio power really only tells a part of the story. Other factors like receive sensitivity and transmit power of the client can have a lot of impact on range. So the OM2P and the OM2P HS models, they're both 2.4 gigahertz only, and they have the same radio power. They can go quite far at about 500 feet line of sight, or 150 meters. And I've even heard people going even farther than that in rare circumstances, but I wouldn't bet on any more than 500 feet. But then the OM5PAC model, that's designed for smaller deployments. It's the dual band 802.11ac, so it's fast, but the radio power isn't nearly as high as the other models. So it's designed for individual rooms going through maybe one wall, one or two walls, or an open area of about 1,000 square feet or less. And then the MR1750, A40, and A60 models all have about that same 500-foot range on 2.4 gigahertz, but their 5 gigahertz bands will be a little bit less. In CloudTrax, there are some radio power settings from 26 dBm all the way down to 5 dBm, as well as use country setting. And so I'll go ahead and switch over to CloudTrax to show you those settings. So you go under Configure and then Radio. And here we have our radio settings here. So you have your transmit power, and if it's on use country setting, then it will use the maximum power that's allowed in your country. That doesn't mean that if you set it, if you're in a country that only allows 20 dBm and you set it up to 26 dBm, you're not going to get that extra power. It just means that it will go up to that maximum power for your country, and then each access point knows which country it's in based on some IP geolocation, and so we don't allow them to go over the transmit power that's legal in that country. And then there's also the individual power limits of each access point. So the OM5PAC, if you set it to 26 dBm, it's not going to get all the way up to 26. It's going to reach its maximum at about 17 dBm. This is also where you set up your auto channel configuration here. So if you just set it to auto, you can just set it and forget it. If you have manual channels turned on, these are going to be your network-wide settings. And so if you didn't have any manual channel settings on each access point, and I'll show you that in just a second, all access points on the network would be on channel 1 here with the channel width of 20. And then 5 gigahertz would be on channel 48 with the channel width of 20. And you can choose 20, 40, or 80 there. So if you want to assign individual channels to your access points, you can go over to your access points page here and click on your access point. You can either do it from the map view or you can do it from the list view. We click that, and you can individually assign here if you want it to be channel 11, 1, 6, and then the width for that on 2.4 gigahertz. And then you can set the transmit power as well. And then on 5 gigahertz, you can set this to be network default or whatever channel you want, and then whatever transmit power you want. You can also see over here in the neighbors that entrance access point doesn't have any neighbors that it can see. But if we look over here at one of these other ones, this neighbors section here will show you the other access points that this one can see. So we can see that this one is doing pretty well. It can see site 713 and site 101 with pretty good signal levels there. You can also see these signal levels between neighbors on the map here. So we have it set up so that dark green is your gateways that are plugged into the network, and then light green are your repeaters. And so this network is set up, if we go back to the list view here, they've staggered the channels here between 1, 6, and 11. There's a couple channel 3s here. But they have it set up so that the access points are grouped together to get them to associate with specific gateways. And that's one thing that you can do if you want to associate a specific repeater to a specific gateway. You can set them both manually to that same channel, and they will associate with each other on that channel. So if you go back to the map view, you can also see the mesh lines here. So as the thicker the line, the stronger the signal. And we can also turn on the channels here, and we can see some more info. Sometimes you have to zoom in to see that info. There we go. Got away from me a little bit. And so you can see if you hover over here that from site 809 to back to this gateway, the signal level is negative 65 as far as the gateway sees the repeater, but then the repeater sees the gateway at a negative 57 signal level. So you can quickly and easily see that if you just zoom into the map and hover over it. All right. So that concludes what I wanted to show you here on the CloudTrax demo. If we have any more Q&A, I know that Craig and Stuart have been feverishly typing away as I've been talking. So I assume there's quite a few questions in there that we might want to answer for the entire group. So, Craig, do we have any?
Yeah, a couple layups first. So on your presentation, you showed an image that was a heat map. What mapping tool generated that image?
That was an Ekahau heat map. So that is a separate piece of software that you would buy, and it's really good at doing that. But a free one that you can use is called NetSpot. They have both Windows and Mac versions. Ekahau is really powerful because you can, they have a planning tool, so you can predict how your access points will signal will go through a building, because you can import CAD files into it, or you can just import a floor plan and then draw walls on it, and then it will predict what your signal levels are going to be before you even have any access points in the area. So it's a really powerful tool. It's also a really expensive tool, so you can choose however way you want to plan that.
Great, thank you. Another question about part of the presentations. What were the names of the signal strength testing apps you mentioned during the presentation?
Yeah, I just mentioned that it was NetSpot, NETSPOT, and then Ekahau, which I always have trouble spelling. I think it's EKAHAU.
Okay, I'm just entering that as well. Okay. So, to follow on, can you provide some open source solutions for wireless planning? The NetSpot free version.
I don't think NetSpot is open source. I don't really know of any open source ones.
But it's free.
But NetSpot is free.
It's free. Okay. Got a lot of those questions. I know we have some that have come in since we started talking. David Reese asked a question. So he's asked, is there no channel width selection for 5 gigahertz?
No, there is.
And we said, yes, there was.
Yeah.
And then he said, so not by AP as with 2.4?
It is over here. So if I open this up, oh, I think it's because that's an MR1750. I know I've seen it before. It might be that this firmware version doesn't support that. Let me look at this other one. You know, I think it was because it's set to the network default. So if I set it to 40, and then you get the channel width here. And since this is an MR900, it's 802.11n device, so it only supports 20 and 40 HD modes.
Okay. What was the name of the tool just mentioned for wireless planning? NetSpot.
NetSpot.
NetSpot. I've got it on my own computer and keep forgetting that. Is there an iOS app for seeing access point RSI?
Not access point RSSI. Yeah, you can search to the App Store for just like Wi-Fi analyzer. I'm an Android person myself, so I don't know exactly what iOS app it would be, but on Android there's an app just creatively called Wireless Analyzer, and it's really good. It gives you pretty graphs and helps you give you some suggestions on what channels you should use.
Okay. So a question about have there been any improvements behind auto channel in the last 12 months, or auto select?
Yeah, we're continuing upgrading it. Since it's a server-side tool, it's easy for us to update without messing with the firmware. So it's something that we tweak if we notice that if anybody comes back to us and say, hey, this auto channel assignment was a little weird, we'll take a look at it and see what happened with it, and then we'll make any necessary tweaks to it.
Okay. How big a factor is the AP orientation based on the OM designs?
Very little. So if you can look at the the radiation patterns of some of those access points in the data sheets, and they are very omnidirectional. So there's pretty much any way you go around it, it's going to have a strong signal pattern, pretty much in a sphere all the way around it. So there isn't any specific polarization you need to worry about, or any direction. It's not a directional antenna by any means.
Yeah. All right. What is the typical resource client density per AP model? So I think he's asking for how many clients per AP.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what we're going for. Let me go back to this slide here. So we don't give specific user count here because every environment is going to be different. But the general guidance is going to be that the OM2P is the lowest capacity. You want to do a maximum of maybe 20 to 30 users on that one. On the OM2P HS, you can do about 20 to 40 users, depending on what traffic they're doing. So if they're doing lots of video and high bandwidth things, it'd be on the lower end of that. The OM5P AC is about 30 to 50 users. MR1750 and the A60 are about 50 to 100 users. And then the A40 is about the same as the OM5P AC with about 30 to 50 users.
Great. Thank you. So another question, Stuart just answered it, but we'll throw it out there as well. Why can't we mesh on the OM5P AC? This is a common question we get occasionally. Yep. You can, in fact, mesh on the OM5P AC, but understand that that device was built specifically for single room deployments. The radios are turned down so as not to interfere with rooms next door to those. So it can, in fact, mesh, but it's got to have a clear line of sight to its meshing partner, or very close to line of sight to its meshing partner.
Yeah, there's nothing in the firmware that prevents you from meshing on it. We just heavily do not recommend it.
Okay, why does meshing not work on 5 gigahertz? I see this as a key feature chronically missing from your hardware.
Yes, we're working on it. It's an issue with driver support, 802.11ac driver support on the access points, and we should have it in beta form soon. So keep an eye on that.
Okay. Can you please flip to the channel overlay page again? We'll just leave it on that.
Okay.
Okay. How did you get the map under the access point to show details at the access points? I think he's talking about the Ekahau design. Those are estimations.
Yeah, those are estimations. So, and with NetSpot, what it does is that you just take your computer. You can lay down a floor plan, and then you walk through the space, and then you click on the floor plan of where you actually are standing at that time, and then it'll take the measurement of where you are, of the access points around you, and then it'll as you're walking through the space and clicking on everywhere that you are, it'll update that map as you go.
Okay. I know this is focused on wireless, but are there any examples of using this with the open mesh switching? So I'm going to ask Justin if you could re-ask that question. What specifically are you looking for? Our devices work automatically, or there's integration built into the switches, so that when you do have a switch deployed with an open mesh access point, you can click on the ports of the switch. You can see what devices are attached to it, what their status is, and configure such things as power consumption to which ones are using PoE, so on and so forth. I'm hoping that answers your question. If not, please go ahead and answer it again. Ask it again. Interesting. Just spoke about this next one this morning. Is there an 802.11ah on the roadmap, which is the Halo?
Not that I.
Looking at it.
Not that I know of right now, but yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I was at a Wi-Fi Now conference last week and sat in on a session on that, and it's a very interesting protocol that would be really cool for the Internet of Things stuff. So Yeah, it's cool technology.
Cool technology, but realistically, it's several years away, at least 12 months away from having a commercially available chipset. That's from what I just real cool stuff.
Yeah, I believe it operates on 900 megahertz, which has a lot lower bandwidth capability, but it has less interference and can go farther, and a lot less power consumption as well. So it's really good for those IoT things.
Okay, next one's a complaint. Oh, got a comment that helps out a lot. There is no iOS app for Wi-Fi. What were we looking at?
It's one, but I don't remember.
And Apple considers it to be hacking.
Oh.
Thank you for that feedback, Tim. Appreciate it.
I guess it gets too far into the hardware that Apple doesn't want you to touch it. Okay. That's why I'm an Android guy.
That's what someone just said. That is just one of the reasons I am an Android guy. Love it. All right. Let's see. Moving down. Airport. Will Auto Channel choose any channels other than 16 and 11?
It can, but very rarely will it.
Okay. What is the polarity of your APs?
I would have to look into some of the things, but the polarity really doesn't matter. Especially nowadays when you have your client devices like your phone, where you might be watching a video and it's in horizontal mode, but then you bring it back up and it's in landscape mode. That's going to completely change the polarization of it, and so nowadays polarization doesn't really matter unless you're doing some like long range point to point things, which is something that we don't do.
We'll do a couple more before we wrap up. What are all the items that can happen during a maintenance window, and what is the suggested duration?
So the maintenance window will that's when firmware updates can take place, and then that's also when the auto channel configuration takes place. Those are the two things that happen during the maintenance window. And what was the duration? Duration, 2 hours is usually enough. If it's a non-critical network and you want to get the firmware updates the second we release them, then you can set it to 24 hours, 7 days a week. But if you would just want to set it up for the times that are the most convenient for you, that would cause you the least disruption if we had to reboot those access points.
Okay, we have a problem in Holland that all routers from the ISP switch channels automatically every 10 minutes. Can you put the maintenance window on a shorter time, and what is the impact on that? I think it means maybe a longer time.
Yeah, you could set it up for the 24 hours. It's still the auto channel configuration is still only going to run once a day, though. Since it's a server side thing, it's a cron job that does it once a day.
Okay. All right. Here's a layout. What is the difference between the MR1750 and the A60?
There is pretty much no difference, except for the A60 being in a shiny new housing that's really flexible, and
no power.
The A60 is PoE only, where the 1750 you can use a power adapter for it. And the A60 comes with all the mounting hardware you need for pretty much any situation. So it's ready to be installed outdoors right out of the box. It has the hardware to install on a ceiling or wall, or a wall plug. And it has a second Ethernet port to pass through. PoE does not pass through, though. And then it has a USB port for future expandability.
Okay. Do all access points support PoE, and is there a solution or options for a DC PoE supply, such as in a DC solar system?
So yeah, let's go back to this the slide with all of the access points. So the OM2P is all models do support PoE, but the OM2P is only passive 24 volt PoE, whereas the rest of them support 802.3 AF active PoE. The OM2PHS and OM5PAC support both passive and 802.3 AF, whereas the rest of these are only the 802.3 AF. And as far as like the solar things, I've gotten questions about these. I've never really seen a specific product that goes directly with these, but as long as they get 12 volts of DC power, they should operate just fine. And the power consumption is under max load for all of them except the 1750 is about 10 to 12 watts, and then the 1750 can go up to about 15 watts.
Okay. I'll take this one. If I recently deployed an entire network of OM5PANs, why can't I get any more of them? Well, last year, on May 1st of 2016, the FCC created a new rule based on the 5 gigahertz radio band. The EU is close to follow, and so we had to make a choice of whether or not to certify the new ones, and the old device could not be certified under the new law. So we had to discontinue selling that product. Hopefully that answers the question. So we'll do one more and then we'll wrap up. Why is your limit of 5 repeaters per gateway? What can we do when we need more?
So that's not a hard-coded limit. You can put more in there. It's just that's a recommendation that we have for best performance. So if you do go over that 5 number, it'll work, but you don't want to do that on a network where you have lots of traffic. So if I know some people who are using OM2Ps just for sensors and for like radio scanners, things that are really low bandwidth, and they can stretch that out to 10 or more repeaters per gateway. But with normal traffic that we think of, like people getting online to check email, Facebook, and watch videos, you want to stick to those recommendations of 5 repeaters and no more than 3 hops.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much. What's the next one? So we will have another one of these next month. I can't think of the topic right now. I should have had that ready to go.
It's a captive portal.
Oh, a deep dive into the captive portal. So thank you very much for your time. We will answer these questions that we didn't get to offline and send them out to everyone. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate the time. Hope this was helpful, and we'll speak with you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.